Good evening. For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Mike Moe. On behalf of my colleagues at GSV and our partners at Arizona State University, I want to welcome you to the 8th Annual ASU GSV Summit. We're delighted to have you here for the next 3 days. We're very excited about the program that we have for you. And since it's an education and talent event, we thought the perfect place to start would be Chemistry 101. So you all remember the periodic table, right? 118 elements, very different, distinct, but when you connect them, amazing things happen. So 2 hydrogens and an oxygen, you get water, you get sodium, and you get chlorine, you get salt. So we got kind of our own little periodic table working at the summit. So there's over 3,500 people at this event over the next 3 days, coming from over 40 countries, over 70 from China alone. And so one of the things that makes this event so special is the diverse backgrounds, geographies, and so forth, all coming together with a shared passion of accelerating innovation and education and talent. So this is really about connecting people. And we see the type of people that come here. It's educators, it's venture capitalists, it's policymakers, technology leaders, business leaders, philanthropists, entrepreneurs, all colliding together, creating huge impact and network effects. Steve Jobs said the Macintosh turned out so well because the people working on it were musicians, artists, poets, and historians, who also happen to be excellent computer scientists. And we think that diversity really is some of the secret to what makes this all work. So this event is not only about connecting people, it's about connecting dots. And with all the news and the noise that's out there, it's what I call infobesity. That's what we're suffering from. So it's really hard to even spot to connect dots, you first need to spot them. Just for your reference, there's actually 12 different spots here. So the spots that we see in the world today include virtual reality, machine learning, artificial intelligence, globalization, Trump, Brexit, cloud computing. These are all different dots that we see, and what we're trying to do is connect these dots to recognize patterns, to give us a perspective of where we think the world is heading and why. And that's what we like to try to share to benefit us all. So the first fundamental of innovation is about, you've got to think differently, right? And so on your seats, you all got a sheet with these 9 dots. I'd like you to take a pen out. And I'd like you to connect these 9 dots without lifting your pen off the paper. So you get 4 lines to connect these dots. I'll give you a few seconds to do it. Okay, I'm not going to answer who figured this out. It's usually about 1 out of 50 get it right, and it's almost always an entrepreneur, but this is how you do it. So obviously you got to go outside the boundaries to make it happen. So now if I asked you to do it with 3 lines, because you've now been able to see that occur, many of you would be able to do this. It looks like this, right? So that's critical. So an example of connecting dots and thinking outside the box is when Bob Dylan recently received the Nobel Prize in Literature. The New York Times said this was redefining the boundaries of literature. Bob Dylan said, some people feel the rain, others just get wet. He also said, colleges are like old age homes, except the fact that more people die in college. So entrepreneurs connect dots. Entrepreneurs think outside boundaries. Entrepreneurs are crazy enough to actually believe that they could do things that haven't been done before. So this is just what goes on. So you really kind of got to be crazy to start a business. So let me give you some facts. Every day in America, 1,100 new companies are formed. Every day in America, 1,100 businesses fail. There's just a 20% probability that a new business will survive its first 3 years. In 2016, there was 3,000 companies that were funded by venture capitalists. In 2016, there were just 40 venture-backed IPOs. You have a 70% more probability of having a heart attack if you're an entrepreneur, 2 times more likely to get divorced, and 3 times more likely to go bankrupt. What kind of nut would start a business? So see if you can name that nut. He lost his job in 32, defeated for state legislature in 32, failed in business in 33. He had a nervous breakdown in 41, defeated in races for Congress in 43, Senate in 55, Vice President in 56, and Senate in 58. So the answer is Abraham Lincoln, 16th president, arguably our greatest president. So overcoming adversity and naysayers, goes with the territory for entrepreneurs. This legendary entrepreneur was told by teachers that he was too stupid to learn anything. He was fired from his first 2 jobs for lack of productivity. This is Thomas Edison, the inventor of the electric light bulb, the phonograph, the movie camera, who said genius was 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration, founder of General Electric, $260 billion market cap. This entrepreneur maverick, his JV partner dropped him, then sued him. His first bank cut him off. His second bank had the FBI investigate him for fraud. 2 creditors showed up at his headquarters on the same day, and by the way, the same time to collect. The U.S. Customs slapped him with a $10 million bill when he had no money. His star brand endorser died in a car crash, and the replacement wore a competitor's product on global TV. Phil Knight, founder of Nike, $91 billion market cap, just do it. So this creative crazy was unemployed, on welfare, and a single mother, hatched the book idea, was stuck on a delayed trade. J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter, 400 million books sold, $25 billion in franchise value. So this entrepreneur launched his business in 2007 with 3 air mattresses, basically from a need to eat. Raised his initial seed capital by selling custom cereal boxes at the 2008 campaign events, Captain McCain's and Obama O's. This is Airbnb, Brian Chesky. 100 million Knight's book last year, $31 billion market value. Last entrepreneur. This tech titan failed the Chinese university entrance exam 3 times. His job as application was rejected by 30 companies, including KFC. Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba, $280 billion market value. So big ideas don't always find a receptive audience, particularly in education. In fact, Socrates was one of the all-time great innovators and educators. He educated Plato and Aristotle, and what did they do? They killed him. So as you look at the education landscape, while it's one of the 4 largest industries in the world by amount spent, the total market cap, the 10 largest market cap public companies is just $61 billion. So put that in contrast to the 3 other largest industries. Energy, $1.6 trillion, healthcare, $1.6 trillion, technology, $3.4 trillion. In fact, if you look at education compared to Google alone, Google is 10 times larger than the 10 largest education companies combined. So that's the bad news. The good news is that what's going on in this industry is really special, and you're seeing scaled business models happening at incredible rates that are solving big problems with tremendous amount of traction. Over the last 10 years, you've seen the VC funding in the education market increase tenfold to $3.1 billion. And CB Insights has shown that the education and talent sector has actually 25 companies that it expects could go public in 2017. So you're starting to see the fruits of that investment. So Socrates wasn't wrong, he was just early. There's 4 gravitational shifts that I'd like to talk about which impact the education and talent industry and really society overall. And the first gravitational shift is digital natives rule. So the class of 2020, the group that went into college last fall, is very, very different than previous classes. So this group was born 18 years ago. Also 18 years ago, Google was born in a garage to Larry Page and Sergey Brin. So the class of 2020 has grown up in a world where information was ubiquitous and free. My generation, information was difficult to get and expensive, and water is free, but things have changed. Steve Jobs also came on the scene 18 years ago for his second tour at Apple with the original goal of putting a computer on everybody's desktop and ultimately a computer in your pocket. So the class of 2020 doesn't think of it as a smartphone, it's just a phone. and they love it. They do everything on it, from transportation to eating to getting products to consuming entertainment. And not only this, but they want what they want when they want it, on demand. So binge watching a Netflix show, so you don't have to wait the next week to see your favorite episode, is standard. So it's not a mystery that the class of 2020 thinks it's ridiculous that you got to show up on Thursday morning, 8 o'clock for an economics 101 class. You should just be able to take that class wherever you want it, whenever you want it. And 50% of the class of 2020 think that online courses are as good or better than physical courses. They love everything to do with technology. They have no memory of the dot-com bubble bursting. But what they do remember is how their parents lost their home during the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. And so the millennials, they don't own homes. It's a 30% reduction in the number of homes that they purchased. And they don't buy cars. So there's more cars sold last year to people aged 75 or older than 18 to 24-year-olds. They also remember how their parents lost the job that they had at the company that they worked at for their entire career and the pension that went along with it. And the Department of Labor says that the class of 2020 is going to have 15 careers between the time they graduate from college and the time that they retire. And one of those jobs is likely to be part of the gig economy as a Lyft driver. So in other words, they don't want to buy cars, but they're happy to share them. Second gravitational shift, geographic, both physical and virtual. So looking in the rearview mirror, the economic engines for the world for the last 100 years was the United States, Japan, Europe, and Canada. So while just 9% of the global population in 2000, these countries represented 52% of all global GDP. But over the last 15 years, the economic growth of these countries has been essentially flat, and demographically, their populations are getting older. So 26% of the population of these countries is older than 60. Just 15% of the population is younger than 15. So in Japan last year, there were more adult diapers sold than baby diapers. Today, these countries' fertility rate is 1.6, so to keep a constant population, you need a 2.0 or greater. So literally, these countries are dying. And their share of GDP globally is 41%, down from 52%. So as we look into the horizon over the windshield, what we see is the emerging economic engines for the world we call V-chips. Vietnam, China, India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So these countries are 43% of the global population. Today, just 28% of global GDP, but their GDP growth is over 8% per year for the last 15 years. Demographically, young populations, just 11% older than 60, and 24% younger than 15. So effectively, the mirror opposite of the other countries. And from a fertility rate, 2.3 times fertility, so they're organically growing their population. So the old center of gravity of the economic world looked like this. The new center of gravity looks like this. And you want to look what's on deck? Here's Africa. 5 of the 10 fastest growing countries in the world last year were from Africa. And people talk about China as being like that was yesterday's news in terms of the growth story. When we look at the mega trends of mobile computing, the emphasis on education, and the mega trend of urbanization, we think the catalyst for growth in China are open-ended as long as we can see. So just from an urbanization standpoint, the United States has 10 cities with 1 million or more population. China has 160. Here's what Shanghai looked like in 1990. Here's what Shanghai looks like today. Shanghai's official population is 24 million, but when you talk to demographers, what they say it actually is closer to 40 million when you look at cell phone traffic. That's larger than Canada. Xi'an, 10th largest city in China with 13 million people, is larger than Sweden, and you've never heard of it. So as you look at middle-class consumption, today it's basically tied between Asia Pacific and North America, but you fast forward the clock to 2030, dramatic shift to Asia Pacific. That's where things are going. And you want to know what a country's priorities are, it's how they spend their money. So you look in the United States in housing, the United States households spend approximately 33% of family income on housing. In Asia, it's 10%. You look at education, Asia spends over 7 times more on education than what the United States does. In a recent trip to China, this was the headline of the South China Morning Post, which is owned by Alibaba. It talks of this, the story was about this epidemic of nearsightedness with Chinese students because they were studying so hard. In fact, 90% of students, of Chinese students going to college are nearsighted because of that as a major factor. When you look at the biggest market caps in the world 25 years ago, it was Exxon, Philip Morris, Walmart, General Electric, and Merck, basically industrial businesses, manufacturing businesses, and most were older than 100 years or older. If you look at the 5 largest market cap companies in the world today, it's Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. Interesting here, the oldest company on this list is Microsoft, and it was started in 1975. But then when you look at the 10th, 11th, and 20th largest market cap companies in the world, Tencent, Alibaba, and China Mobile, not only is it interesting that they're from China, but these companies didn't exist 20 years ago. So what's exciting to us about being in this room and about where the world's heading is the mindset of innovation and entrepreneurship that is made between San Francisco and San Jose such an amazing place, is going global and it's going viral. So we like to say this, it's going from Austin to Boston, from Chicago to Sao Paulo, from Mumbai to Shanghai to Dubai. This is the global Silicon Valley. So I wrote a book that came out a couple of months ago called the Global Silicon Valley Handbook. You're encouraged to all buy it. We're too cheap to give it away for free. But in the book, we kind of tongue-in-cheek map out the 50 most innovative markets in the world, who you need to know, where you need to go, what you need to know. And with that, provide effectively this map. We were lucky enough to have TJ Miller at one of the events that we had, who's from HBO's Silicon Valley. So he read the book, and you can see Li Jiang and Susie Han with him. So he gave this quote, one of the most ridiculous but informative books I've ever read. And so we'll take that as an endorsement, for sure. Looking at another shift, and this is virtual. So Facebook today has 1.7 billion members. If they were called citizens, the 1.7 billion citizens would make it the largest country in the world. In many respects, it really is a country. It has its own culture, it has its own rules, it has its own currency, it has its own commerce, it even has its own fake news. And virtual reality is now coming to a gymnasium through you, having Shamu with Magic Leap being the group that's able to do this soon. Pokemon Go last summer was an official launch starting gun going off in the augmented reality sector. 500 million downloads in 2 months, fastest growing game in history. With augmented reality, virtual reality going from $1 billion market today to $80 billion market by 2025. We're very lucky tonight, after me, to have John Riccitiello, who's the CEO of Unity, which is the software company providing the powerful virtual reality for many of the most exciting games today, including Pokemon Go. So the third gravitational shift is digital disruption and automation. In 1994, Mark Andreessen started Netscape, basically making the internet available to the world. So over the last 23 years, the digital tracks that have been laid that we now have 3.7 billion people on the internet. The cost of computing has gone down 99% in those 23 years. Cost of storage is basically free, infinite capacity. 2.6 billion smartphones, 258 billion apps downloaded last year alone. So as a catalyst to start a lot of things, Amazon with Jeff Bezos was also started in 1994. So in that year, Sears Roebuck had a $16 billion market cap. At one point, Sears Roebuck was actually the largest retailer in the world. Today, Sears Roebuck's market cap is $1 billion, and recently announced that it might have to file for bankruptcy to protect itself from creditors, and Amazon's market cap is $450 billion. But it wasn't just Sears that was steamrolled by Amazon. it was many different retailers, including from Best Buy to Target to Macy's, and all about a 60% reduction in market cap over the last 10 years of those companies, or over $100 billion of market value lost. But what's really amazing, in the last 6 months, department stores have shed 100,000 jobs since October. To put that in perspective, that's more than the total number of coal miners employed in the United States. So when people talk about being worried about the coal miners, what they really should be worried about is the fired retail workers. The good news is the e-commerce sector has created 355,000 new jobs since 2007. The bad news is that technology and automation continues to eat jobs. Amazon alone, quote unquote, employs 45,000 robots in its warehouses. In China, they're going to buy 90,000 industrial robots this year, 175,000 by 2020. So overall, there's 350 million manufacturing and warehouse workers whose jobs are at risk or likely to go away. So Amazon's latest introductions of weapons of mass disruption is the Echo. And you'll hear a little bit more about the Echo in a few minutes. But what the Echo basically is a voice-automated personal operating system. And it's growing very fast. There's 10 million units that have been sold already, 40 million expected by 2020. And the skills of the Echo are becoming quite significant, have increased 12 times in the last 12 months. And to give you a little bit of a window to what this future of having your own personal operating system might look like, I'm going to play a quick clip from her with Joaquin Phoenix.
Mr. Theodore Twombly, welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system, OS1. We'd like to ask you a few basic questions before the operating system is initiated. This will help create an OS to best fit your needs.
Okay.
Are you social or antisocial?
I guess I haven't really been social in a while, mostly because...
In your voice, I sense hesitance. Would you agree with that?
Was I sounding hesitant?
Yes.
No, sorry if I was sounding hesitant. I was just trying to be more accurate.
Would you like your OS to have a male or female voice?
Female, I guess.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother?
That was fine, I think. Well, actually, I think the thing I always found frustrating about my mom is, if I tell her something that's going on in my life, her reaction is usually about her. It's not about...
Thank you. Please wait as your individualized operating system is initiated.
So, does that sound ridiculous? Well, the Echo's already had 250,000 marriage proposals to it. And last week, new features that announced were whispering and pausing for emphasis. So this is happening. So Andrew Ng is our keynote speaker on Wednesday at lunch. He's talking about AI being the new electricity, and you want to see what impact the old electricity had on the economy and work. 200 years ago, 95% of the work population was in agriculture. By 2020, 87% of the work population is going to be in knowledge and services, with a large part of that catalyzed by the introduction of electricity. So if you want to know what the future of work looks like and what 2120 looks like, what a lot of people do is, to predict the future, they extrapolate the present, which, a lot of smart people even do that. Mark Zuckerberg talks about everybody should be a programmer because he'll hire any qualified programmer because they just have an insatiable demand for it. And in fact, there's 1.2 million computer science jobs opening by 2020. No less an expert than the Harvard Business Review talks about data science being the sexiest job of the 21st century. It's sexy because there's a huge demand imbalance for high-paying jobs. The problem with this thinking is basically this graph. Human capabilities are on a linear growth curve, and computers and technology are on an exponential curve, and we're here. What this is basically saying is that pretty soon the technology will be replacing the technologist, as well as a lot of other skilled jobs that people can't imagine today. So McKinsey's estimating that there's 12 million skilled jobs that will be eliminated by 2025, and it's not just telephone, teleservice people. And Goldman Sachs equity trading desk has gone from 600 people to 2. And by 2025, it's estimated that robots will manage $7 trillion. Already, the Associated Press uses robots to do financial analysis and reports on 3,000 companies every single quarter. So what does that mean? That in the future, money is going to be managed by robots making decisions from inputs from other robots. Add this all up, and 50% of all jobs are at risk of replacement in the next 20 years. So smart people like Paul Krugman, who won the Nobel laureate, says, we could be looking at a society in which all the gains and wealth accrue to whoever owns the robots. Bill Gates recently said, if a robot comes to do a human job, you'd think that we'd tax at a similar level. Sam Altman, who runs Y Combinator, says the obvious conclusion is that government will just have to give people money. And for some people, that sounds like a pretty good future. I mean, basically, you sit around in togas, drinking wine, eating grapes. But the problem with that thinking is effectively, this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for a number of years. In fact, John Maynard Keynes talked about in 1930 this new disease called technological unemployment. And then you go back even a few more years. It's Queen Elizabeth in 1580 worried about this new sewing technology. She said, I have too much regard for the poor knitters to approve an invention that will deprive them of their employment and reduce them to starvation. And then you go back a few years before that, King Solomon, who was considered to be the wisest person ever in the world, said, the plow is the devil and the beginning of the end of man. Now, he didn't actually say that, I made that up, but the rest is all true. So as sure as the sun comes up on the east, we know that automation is going to continue to eat jobs, but what it doesn't eat, work. So for the fourth gravitational shift, we talk about the knowledge economy. And what does that mean, and where does that lead us? So we all know there's a direct correlation between your level of education and your income. Also, there's a direct correlation between your education and your employment. And now what the data is starting to show is the more educated you are, the less likely you're going to be disrupted by technology, at least in the near term. So what the obvious thing you think is, well, that means I just need to get more education so I can stay relevant and productive. But the problem is the way that most people do that is they go to school or college, and that's both disruptive for their life and it costs a lot of money. In fact, college education has grown 3.5 times inflation since 1980, twice the level of healthcare. Also, you look at college debt, it's almost tripled just in the last 10 years. So to figure out how to get the knowledge that you need is not going to be in a traditional way. You're going to have to be able to fill up your knowledge tank continuously, what we call Kaizen EDU, which is continuous learning. But the best way that that's going to happen is invisibly and seamlessly. You're going to be learning without thinking about it. You're going to be learning because that's just the way it's going to be. And so if you look at the old system, you played from 0 to 5, you learned from 5 to 25, you earned from 25 to 65, and then you retired. The new system is you're going to learn from the time you're born to the time you retire, if you ever retire. And that's just the reality, but it's going to be in a visible, seamless way. So that gets us to our conclusion, which is network effects. And so we think that network effects are a huge component in how we create the solutions to have everybody have an equal opportunity to participate in the future. So the classic definition of network effects is every node added to the network creates exponential value as opposed to linear value. The best network effects businesses are seamless and invisible. They're basically natural. They happen naturally. So an example of this is Ladies' Night, which supply induces demand and then reinforces itself. Probably the greatest network effects business of all time is Facebook, which every single new member adds exponential value to the network. But for an example of a great product that was disrupted off the face of the earth almost by a competitor that introduced a product that had network effects, think of BlackBerry. So 10 years ago, BlackBerry was, people loved their BlackBerry. In fact, they're so popular with their users, they were called crackberries. Remember that? And then Apple comes out with their iPhone, and their innovation wasn't the phone, but it was really the App Store. And each app increased the value to the users on that network, and each new person on the network had incentives for new apps to be built, and that effect was pretty amazing. So 10 years ago, when Apple introduced the iPhone, the market cap for BlackBerry and Apple was essentially the same. Not anymore. Apple has the largest market cap in the world, and BlackBerry has basically gone away. So we think about network effects in education. It's about connecting people. It's connecting ideas and opportunities to create exponential outcomes. So how we see it is talent is on the supply side, and work is on the demand side. An issue here is that only 30% of this talent has a college degree or better, and on the work side, 65% or more of all jobs being created require either a college education or skills of the equivalent. So the opportunity is for education to fill the middle here, and that's what we see as the real opportunity for network effects. But another way to look at it is basically we're networking education and talent to work. That's what we think real network effects are. And some quick examples of this is the military veteran that takes the finance course from Wharton through Coursera to get to be a commercial banker. It's the current college student that uses Chegg's student graph to get a relevant internship or have the right major. It's the mother that left the workforce to raise her kids, then wants to get reconnected, take in Reboot, to get connected, to get confident, and be able to get that job of the future. It's the recent college graduate that needs to go to finishing school so they have skills effectively that are employable. And General Assembly is a player in this, helping with things like graphic design. Companies like AT&T with 120,000 workers that need to retool that workforce using people like Udacity and Coursera to do that. It's the middle manager taking the North Carolina MBA online through 2U that's looking for the promotion. And it's the people in sub-Saharan Africa who have lots of talent but little opportunity getting networked with Adele to be able to code to get employed by the largest and most important technology companies in the world. Those are the network effects that we think are so powerful. And we think the opportunity here over the next couple of days is really think about how these network effects can be formed, changing the world for good, and giving everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dave Balter.
And I was going to do something that's better.
Okay. How many of us, show of hands, own an Amazon Alexa or Google Home device? Put your hands up. Okay. Well, you guys are not alone. In 2016, 11 million of these devices already existed, and in Q1 of 2017, another 10 million were sold. Statistics show that by 2020, 128 million of these devices will be in people's homes, and combined with other voice-first devices, that means that more than half of the US population will have a voice assistant in their home. As a matter of fact, out of the 12,700 skills that are in the Amazon Alexa store, nearly 12% are already for education, which begs the question, how will education be transformed by these devices? We run a company called Mylestone. Mylestone has spent about a year building a tool that takes photographs, all those photographs that you have on your phone, and translates them into stories that you can listen to on Alexa devices. So here are some pictures of a trip that somebody took to Puerto Rico, and literally just by giving them to our system, it's able to translate it into a story that includes things about objects in the photos, themes, etc. So people ask us, how do we make this magic happen? Well, there are two things at work. One is computer vision. So we use computer technology in order to abstract out objects and data and information and themes from those photos. The second thing is even more magical. We have a team of artificial intelligence hamsters. They go through the photos and they use their algorithms to turn those into stories. Okay? We pay them very little, but they work hard. Okay, so to give you an example of this, our friends at Classroom Dojo here gave us a few photos of their school experiences, and we're going to ask for a memory. So, Alexa, ask Mylestone Memories to tell us about Class Dojo.
Here's your memory about Class Dojo. Today Holly went on a field trip with the rest of her classmates. It was a great chance for her to burn off all her wiggles and frolic in nature. Usually, Holly reads with her friends, or else scans for clues with a magnifying glass. But in the fresh air of a hiking trail, she learned about plants and animals. When all the kids got tuckered out, they sat down by the bridge and waited for the bus to arrive. It had been a day full of adventures, and Holly couldn't wait to tell her parents all about it.
So you can see the opportunities are pretty endless here. Imagine taking a set of photos of anything and turning it into a learning experience that other people can appreciate, learn from, or preserve for the future. So we want to give you a tiny bit of an experience of this. So here's the little game we're going to play. You need to pull out your phone, go to mylestone.com/edtech. Take 5 photos of anything. It can be of this event, which would be wonderful. But it could be from anything that is an education experience. When you do that, you submit it to our system. We do the rest. This will come back to you as a story that you can recall on an Alexa device or off the web, etc. The 15 best stories, we are going to send you an Amazon Alexa dot. So get your game on, send us your awesome stories. For those who want to hear more, whatever just happened, you can win a dot. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Riccitiello.
The demo is leaving. Hey, good evening, everybody. So I'm John Riccitiello, and I have the great pleasure to lead a cool company called Unity Technologies. Now, a little on my background. I spent about 20 years in the game industry and had the opportunity to lead Electronic Arts twice. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. And before I dive into more of what my subject matter is, I'd like to start with a couple of stories. So one of these stories goes back to the year 2000. In the year 2000, I was skiing. I was sitting on the chairlift, and a chatty little 10-year-old sat next to me. And I was talking to him, and he started telling me, literally, the scores for every game that had taken place that year so far played by the Green Bay Packers. But he didn't just tell me who won and lost. He told me literally play by play what happened in a lot of the games, and he could describe the teams they played and who they were. He could describe them offense, players by name, defense, players by name, special teams, players by name. Somehow it seemed like he must have had the voice of John Madden in his ear. And I was kind of struck by that, and I was partly right. I asked him, I said, well, where did you learn all this stuff? And he said he was a Madden gamer. He'd gone online, he played all the time. And he learned all 1,500 of those names, their strengths and weaknesses, what was involved in playing that game, because he lost. He lost and lost and lost and learned along the way until he won. And that's the point. He was involved in something deeply interactive, and he was more learning by doing than doing by learning. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in a few minutes. Another story, I have 2 beautiful daughters, and I can recall when they were tween-aged, and I got involved in their PTA, and I ended up being the chairman of the PTA Tech Committee. And I live in Silicon Valley, and their opportunity is literally everywhere. We spend way too much money educating our kids in arcane sciences and the like. And I thought I had my perch, one of the premier schools in all of Silicon Valley, a place where our kids were going to get ahead. And there I was, chairman of the Parent Tech Committee. Now, as chairman of the Parent Tech Committee, I expected to be dazzled because they had a big program. And they were going to educate my kids to know so much more than I could have learned at any point in my life. And what did they do? They showed me a program of how they were going to teach the teachers to use PowerPoint and Word and Outlook and Excel and some basic tools. I nearly started to cry. They were teaching the teachers, and through them our children, to consume technology. They were a million miles away from learning to create technology. They weren't talking at all about it. Now, I obviously had my lecture and I pushed them in a different direction, and that's frankly what tonight's conversation is about and what I'm going to share with you today. Now, I want to introduce Unity and who we are as a company. I could start by telling you, what Unity, the game engine, is. That's what we make. Now, ours is a product known by virtually every game developer or content developer in the world. You probably don't know what it is. Well, it's a set of tools that basically does all the stuff under games. Animation and lighting and physics and basic interaction and how controls work, how to get it to the iPhone or Android or a PC or a Mac. That's what our technology does, and many, many, many game developers build on top of that. In fact, about half the world's game developers build on top of that, and about 2/3 of the world's developers for AR and VR build on top of our technology. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to dig a little bit into another introduction to my company, what this slide's about. I can talk about financials, although we're private, so I can't talk about it here. But I could talk about a lot of things. I think the way to understand our company the best is to understand what we try to do every day when we wake up, what our mission is. We look at our audience of developers, people that do the hard job of creating content, and we try to solve 3 things. We want to put powerful tools in their hands, whether they can afford it or not. That's democratizing development. We want to solve really hard problems in physics or lighting and animation so they don't have to do those mundane tasks. And we want to enable their success. We do a lot of things to help them find an audience or to help them find revenue where they otherwise wouldn't. So there's my company. We make a game engine. Lots of people use it. And this is what we try to do. But before I go any further, I'd like to dig into a subject I'm really passionate about, and I've mentioned a couple of times already. It's the world of AR and VR. Now, this is the world of Oculus. It's the world of the Samsung Gear, HoloLens from Microsoft, Cardboard, or other platforms from Google. This is the world where you put on a head-mounted display and you are inside the action. You're inside the experience. And I personally believe it's the final platform. And I want to give you some sense of what I mean by that. When my parents were children, the first time a visual screen came into the house was a television set, black and white. It was about 15 feet away from the couch, and they all sat around and watched all the things that you watched. I have no clue in the days gone by. When I was young, they introduced the PC, and we had a screen, 3 feet away, and we typed with a keyboard and then ultimately a mouse, but that 15 feet got a lot closer. And as recently as the last decade, we all got one of these things. And the screen that we interact with, phone call. Anyway, the screen we interact with got right here, inches away from our face. There's a consistent evolution here. And that evolution is from 15 away to 2 to 3 feet away to 6 inches. And with AR and VR, you step right into the experience. Now, I'm a giant believer that this changes everything. We are going to be inside these experiences. And I believe in the fullness of time, 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years at the outside, we are going to see billions, I didn't say millions, billions of people with some sort of head-mounted display interacting with the world. Whether they're at work, where they would otherwise be at a flat screen, that data will be all right here. Whether they're at home, being entertained on a game system, their house will be the game system that they're wandering around in. Whether they're electricians and the experience helps them be smarter when they're putting things together. And I hate to imagine it ever gets to this. Maybe they work for the police and they're defusing a bomb. But the data in front of them, brought into their eyes by one of these devices, is going to tell them exactly what the red wire does and the blue wire does and the green wire does and which one to cut with precision. And as I said, I hope it doesn't come to that, but that is precisely where we're going. A world where AR and VR is that pervasive. So why do I believe that? Well, first off, I sort of work at the place that's the foundation for a lot of this stuff. I've seen it. But there's something else I can tell you that would give you confidence to believe like I do. The most valuable companies on this planet, from Google to Microsoft to Facebook and many others, are investing tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars to make this true. This inevitable evolution from 15 feet to 3 to 6 inches to you being fully inside the experience. Now, we talk a lot about democratization at Unity, where we try to put powerful tools in the hands of developers, whether they can afford them or not. What has this got to do with education? Why am I here today? So one thing we try to do, and it's very serious for us, is we try to bring that all the way to the hobbyist, to the student. And democratizing creativity, what am I talking about here? Well, earlier I'd said that we do things like lighting and physics and animation and all that stuff. We do all the hard, repetitive stuff so the user can be left free to create. They can make amazing things, and they do using Unity. There's other tools out there, but ultimately these powerful tools are going to enable literally millions, if not billions, of people to be technology and content creators. The second thing we like to talk about is democratizing opportunity. And it's one thing to learn the skills, but it's another thing to get a pathway to a job or to find the team that you can assemble around that job. We saw those as hard problems, and we created a thing called Unity Connect. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it essentially connects the dots for them. And lastly, democratizing impact. What is that about? Well, I think a simple truth is that point that I mentioned to you earlier about the football experience and that boy with his Madden experience, he was learning by doing, not doing by learning. And that's all about being interactive, where your experience isn't a one-way communication from a teacher. You are interacting with other students, you're interacting cooperatively, competitively. And one way to think about this is, back to the stories of when I was a boy. When I was a boy, they said, learn or live and learn, the notion that you'd sort of gain experience over time. I think what I'm learning from the game industry and what I learned from interaction and how people absorb information, more to the point is you learn by dying, or you learn by failing and trying again and again and again. And that's what's at the root of interaction. It drives more engagement, more fun, more involvement. And for you out there that are in the world of creation, for the world of education, whether you're a developer or a publisher, this is the better place to be if you want that learning to stick to the child of those you're trying to educate. Now, earlier with the notion of content creation, I'd mentioned this idea that we help create and find an audience. What did I mean by finding an audience? This is a capture from earlier today of the installs of just the mobile games built in Unity that have been launched over the last several months and what's being installed. Today, 50 million times today, someone around the world will install a game built in Unity. That's 7,000 downloads per second, 24 hours a day. The point I'm making, you can find an audience for this stuff. It's out there. If you make it interactive, they find it. And as I said, this is a big, big number. Another number that's worth mentioning is you're joining good company. 55% of the mobile games are built in these technologies, the technologies we provide. So again, you're joining a large audience, you're joining the right folks. It's 2/3 of the world's VR and AR experiences are built in this technology. And you're building a group of people, 6 million strong, that are reaching 2.4 billion unique devices around the world. That's more than all the televisions combined. So if I had to sum up this notion of democratizing creativity, we help them make it and we help them find an audience that matters so they can get somewhere with it. Now another point is this opportunity, Unity Connect. I've mentioned earlier, very important, that not only do they need to be educated, they know how to make it, they need to be able to either find a job or find a team to help them make it. Unity Connect launched earlier, I'd say about, November of past year, still in beta. It's shocking how much uptake there is on this. It's a place where creators can publish their portfolio, whether it's code or it's art or it's games, and the people that need to employ those people find them online very quickly. There are tons of services if you've got an engineering background to find a job. There are tons of services and networks if you're an MBA. But if you've got the tools and you've got the skills in the world of content creation, technology creation, you don't already work for a big company, it's really hard. And this is one way to solve one piece of that puzzle. Now, lastly, I'm going to return to the point of impact, the point of interaction equals engagement. Now, I started with a story about football. I mentioned the NFL and the boy in the chairlift, and that's not a fake story, it's a real story. But let's think of another example of whether we really do learn by doing or do by learning. Let's think skiing, for example. I remember the first time I learned to ski, it was quite a long time ago. Somebody told me, lean downhill. I'm supposed to somehow stand on the edge of a cliff and lean that way, okay? this is not what occurred to me as the right idea. It's not what occurs to any of us. And here we are in beautiful Salt Lake City, all these great mountains behind us. This only makes sense in the context of having your skis and boots on and someone giving you a little bit of a shove and you getting a sense of what it feels to edge your skis and to lean into a turn. You learn the skill by doing it and practicing it. You almost never learn by reading it. It's almost impossible. And so many things are like that. So the profound point I want to make, and it's a super important one, you learn by doing and by failing and by doing it again and by failing again. And through failure and through the magic of interaction, whether it's cooperative or it's competitive, it doesn't matter. You learn through that action of serial failure and ultimately getting to a better outcome and a success. The point that I'm making is we've created systems in the world sometimes where we sort of grade on a curve. In the world of games, in the world of AR and VR, and all of these things, you get to do it as many times as you want until you've mastered the skill. So, look, this is a pretty simple message. I think engagement equals learning squared. It's better. And I can't think of, frankly, any better invitation to the 800 million learners in the world today to get an education, to get the right tools, to get a device that will help them create and join the program. It's wide open, and I think there's endless opportunity. Anyway, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time this evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Edward Bilous.
Thank you. I know there's some text here somewhere. Wondering if the text is available. Well, I'll begin without it and see how my memory's doing. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you very much. It's so wonderful to be in an environment with so many extraordinary and talented people. I've been very fortunate to have a career that's allowed me to work with some of the finest artists and educators and innovators, beginning first at Lincoln Center and now with institutions around the world. I began my work at the age of 21, and so I guess you could say that my passion for arts and education is a pre-existing condition. So I'm hoping you'll catch that bug tonight and take it home to your communities as well. There's exciting new terrain that's forming at the intersection of the arts, technology, and learning. And this terrain is inspiring engineers, designers, scholars, artists, and teachers to work across disciplines and create innovative multimedia programs and experiences that are changing the way we learn and the way we create. I find this new terrain incredibly exciting, and so this year I launched Virtua Creative, a new company that will produce live and virtual experiences designed to foster collaboration, inspire imagination, and nurture interdisciplinary thinking. Virtual Creative already has an exciting portfolio of projects in the works. We're developing projects with National Public Television, with the Google Cultural Institute, with the National World War I Centennial Commission, the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts, the Fordham University, and arts institutions in Europe and Asia. A project that I'm particularly interested about, that I really is the reason I'm here to share with you today, is called Everything is Connected. It's a live stage, a multimedia stage, and virtual reality experience that shows kids and allows them to explore the links between the creative arts and academic subjects. The platform for Everything is Created will allow students and artists from around the globe to collaborate and contribute to the production. I've invited 3 incredibly talented young artists with me today to give you a little peek at some of the very early stages of the collaborations, which will be premiered next May in 2018 at the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts. Our artists are violinist Chelsea Starbuck-Smith, percussionist Adam Malouf, and singer Alita Moses. You'll notice that Alita has some controllers on her wrists and hands that will allow her to use her voice, to extend the range of her voice, interact with artists both here and in different locations, as well as in virtual environments. So some of the kind of Tai Chi choreographed kind of motion that you'll notice is her actually shaping the sound and the space and the visuals of what you'll see and hear. And eventually that will take place again here and in other performing arts centers in different locations. You'll see some little clips, the very first stages of a ballerina and another dancer who are beginning to collaborate with us. And they were filmed using motion capture technology. The output of their data is also changing the projection design and the sound design in very, very interesting ways. So I'd like to ask, if you would, to imagine a year from now when these various artists and designers and engineers and architects and writers come together and produce this wonderful, exciting stage event. Everything is connected will premiere at the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts. If you're interested in learning more or perhaps participating with us, please come down to our booth at Tomorrowland or email us at virtualcreative.com. So please enjoy.